I'm Tracy Sinclair, and this is your FastCast for November 15th, 2024. Our top story for today: more than $104 million are coming to Alaska to improve ports across the state. That's according to an announcement from the Department of Transportation's Maritime Administration today. The funding is part of the Biden administration's bipartisan infrastructure bill and will invest nearly $580 million in 31 port improvement projects across the country. Of the money coming to Alaska, $50 million is designated for a cargo terminal replacement project at the Don Young Port of Alaska. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says it's all in an effort to strengthen supply chain reliability, reduce costs of everyday items, and lower carbon emissions.
The cost of goods is especially high in Alaska because of what it takes to deliver things through shipping, air freight, or whatever combination gets things to where they need to be. When we have more reliable and greater capacity, that means it's possible to move goods more efficiently, and that contributes to the fight we've had to deliver disinflation, to bring prices back to a normal growth path.
In addition, 5 other communities in Alaska will see improvements to their ports with more than $54 million combined.
These smaller ports are vitally important for the communities that count on them every day. And so the investments going to Kodiak, to the island, Gillingham, Hoonah, St. Paul, which is a big priority for Senator Sullivan, and Juneau. Each has its own needs, and each is getting support through this program.
And here's a breakdown of those projects. More than $11 million is going to Juneau for its Aurora Harbor Drive Down float project. More than $11 million is going to Dillingham for replacement of their boat harbor float system and more. Nearly $9.5 million is going to Hoonah for its Marine Industrial Center cargo dock project. More than $11 million is going to Kodiak for its St. Herman Harbor moorage expansion project. And more than $11 million is going to the community of St. Paul for renovations of its City South Dock and new Birthing Dolphins project. To hear an extended version of our conversation with Secretary Buttigieg, go to our website or check out our In-Depth Alaska podcast. A man was stabbed in Emonic early Wednesday morning in what Alaska State Troopers describe as self-defense. According to AST, 31-year-old Lucas Agathlic was attempting to break into a home when he was stabbed by someone inside the house. Agathlic was taken to the Emonic clinic where he died from his injuries. The district attorney's office has decided not to file charges. Don't forget, you can get news, sports, and of course your weather all day long on alaskasnewssource.com. And don't forget to join us at 4, 5, 6, and 10 on Alaska's News Source.